is called The Road to Ownership. So we've divided the video series into a section of 10 essential components that every buyer goes through on their way from essentially identifying what type of property they intend to buy until closing, actually getting the keys to the commercial piece of real property. So many of you have been understandably confused with the legal concepts and kind of the complexity of having to deal with lawyers and bankers, both on the mortgage side as well as maybe hard lending. So what we've done is create this series that we hope is going to be a blessing for you. And so what you're going to see is this road to ownership. And this is just an overview. So each video will go in detail into each of these steps. But I wanted to give you a kind of a basic overview of what you can expect to be rolled out. So first and foremost, we've got steps here. One, which is basically identifying the property. That is really taking you through the various types of potential commercial real estate that exist in the current marketplace, and understanding some of the basic terminology that you're going to want to master if you're dealing with commercial real estate brokers, mortgage brokers, your lenders, sellers counsel, your own counsel, your CPA, other people that are typically on your team for any type of commercial real estate acquisition. There's kind of like a lingo, right? You probably know it. And there's a lingo that takes place in the context of commercial real estate. So that step one is really kind of understanding that and getting you to focus as a buyer really on what your next acquisition is going to be. So once we've found the property that we intend to try to buy, the next step that you're going to see in our video series is dealing with a letter of intent, right? What is a letter of intent? Basically a non-binding offer between the buyer to the seller, setting forth kind of the material terms associated with the transaction. So we'll go into depth of what a letter of intent is, as well as show you actual examples, and we'll provide our contact information, so you can always feel free to reach out to us if you are baffled by or you'd like an example of what a letter of intent is. We're happy to provide that to you for free of charge, right? The point of the real estate securities blanket is to provide free content for you, educational content, so that you can either discuss with your team members, take it to your lawyers, or your team members, or if we're your lawyers, that you can discuss it with us. Step three is what we call the PSA. That's also the purchase and sale agreement. So we'll take you in depth with what are the material terms for your purchase and sale agreement. What terms should you have in there? Regardless of the type of real estate acquisition that you're about to buy. We'll tell you some of the terms that you need to watch out to and what the pinch points are in that step three on the purchase and sale agreement. Step four, right? So we've identified the property, we've submitted a letter of intent, we've won the beauty contest, so to speak. The seller has accepted our LOI. We have negotiated the purchase and sale agreement. And now what? What's the next step? Well, step four is doing the due diligence. So, you know, what can you expect during the due diligence period? Again, this is what is your lawyer doing? What are the legal ramifications during the due diligence period? What should you expect? We'll take you in depth in that step number four to kind of show you from our perspective what you should be looking for as the buyer of a commercial piece of real estate. Step five, this is where you're going to begin to think about, you've gone through the due diligence period, or you're getting to the end of your due diligence period, it's about to expire, and you're thinking about, okay, now I know that I really want to buy this piece of property. Well, it's at this point that you start to think of okay, how's this going to happen? What am I going to do? Who's going to be the owner of this piece of property? It's not uncommon. In fact, it's very common that your lender will require you to form a new, what we call special purpose entity to actually be the borrower. the owner of that entity. So in step number 5, in that video, we will take you through the various things that you need to be concerned about in connection with forming the entity that will ultimately own the property. Number 6, this is in particular relevant to those of you that will be raising equity in connection for the acquisition. Remember, so it is not uncommon to be raising equity, meaning the amount of money that a lender is going to require us to show up at the time of closing to basically pay the lender in order to get to the loan. So many of us that own our own homes, you used your own money for that down payment. Well, if you're going to syndicate or you're going to raise equity from passive investors or other individuals, that is a security because they're expecting a rate of return or return on their investment, and you are raising capital. That's the basically my rule of thumb of what a security is. So you're going to have to do that through what we call a private placement offering. So in step 6, we'll take you through the kind of the meat of what that looks like, what you should expect the components of a PPM or a private placement memorandum to look like, and how that kind of interplays with the entity that will actually ultimately own the asset, and how do you deal with passive investors who also own a piece of that same entity throughout the life cycle of your ownership of that asset. That's step 6. Step 7, working with the lender, right? So remember, many of you that are going to be shopping for, identifying that piece of commercial property that you ultimately want to own, you're also going to be raising debt, or also called leverage. And you're going to have to work with that lender. That lender is going to have a law firm or a lawyer assigned to your particular transaction. So your lawyer will be working with their lawyer. So it's in this step that we will explain to you kind of what to look out for in connection with the loan documents and the various documents that your lender is going to expect to see on the debt side of it. Step 8. This is where we talk about in detail working with title. So, what's the point? This is sometimes for many clients, one of the most confusing aspects of the transaction. In large part, they just say, I don't want to know about it. You handle it. I don't want to know about it. Well, our firm is really intentional about trying to give clients the information as to the why. The why is something happening so that you at least will be informed. Not to say that you're going to be responsible or obligated to do anything, but I want every client or every person watching this video, that's even people that aren't clients, to kind of understand what's the purpose of title and title companies in connection with this particular transaction. That's step 8. Step 9. There's always negotiations that take place throughout the transaction, from acceptance of your LOI to purchase and sale agreement to loan documents to conveyance and transfer documents. So we're going to take you in depth with basically what those documents look like, what's the reason behind the documents, what's the purpose, and what do they lead, what's the net effect, right? So this document does what and why. We're going to share with you all of the various documents in connection with negotiation with the seller, for conveyance and transfer documents and related documents, to the title company, what the title companies are going to expect from you as the buyer in connection with the issuance of a title policy and owner's policy for you, and a pro forma or a lender's policy for your lender. And then any additional documents that the lender may require you as the buyer to sign, or for you to at least be informed about, that are going to be going through in that transaction. And then step 10, right? We're going to talk about what should I expect for the closing process in the context of a commercial real estate transaction. Much different than a residential closing transaction. So the whole closing process, the logistics behind it, who does what and when and how and all of that stuff. We will take you through that in step 10.